We begin today the Gemara on Daf Tzad Gimel Amud Aleph, the second line from the top of the Yamud. The Gemara here is in the middle of discussing the machlokes of Rav and Shmuel in a case where you have a cheskas mammon, someone that has money in his possession, and someone else claims that you owe him money or it belongs to him for whatever reason, but he doesn't have real proof. All he has is roiv. He wants to take out money from you based on a certain majority that there is. The Gemara before discussed regarding a buyer and a seller, where the buyer says that most people buy an ox for plowing. You sold me an ox that could only be slaughtered because it's too wild. And based on that roiv, he wants to be mitzi mammon from the seller, pay me back, because this whole sale is null and void. So Rav says that you can use the roiv to be mitzi mammon, to take out money. But Shmuel says that no, that the cheskas mammon, the fact that he has money in his possession, is stronger, and you can't use roiv as a reason to take out money from someone. That's the discussion here. Okay, so the Gemara is going to bring more braises and rayas to this machlokes. Toshama, the brisa says, or maybe this is a mishna actually. Shor shenagach esapara, in Bava Basra. Shor shenagach esapara, when you have an ox that gored a cow. Oh, this is the Mishnah in the beginning of Shosh, this is the beginning of the Perek there, Shosh Nagach Sapara. And v'nimtza ubra b'tzida. And what happens? You see now that there's a ubar, there's a fetus that's lying there dead on the side. But it's not clear exactly how it died. Now it's unknown whether this cow gave birth before the ox gored it. And if that's the case, the ox did not cause this fetus to die. It died some other way. It just was born dead, but nothing to do with the goring of the ox. Or it's because of the goring of the ox that's what caused it to die, and that's why it's dead, and therefore it's the responsibility of the ox. So what's the halacha in this case? Now what we're talking about over here is an ox which is the tam. The first 2 or 3 times that it gores, and it just pays chatzi nezek, half. So now, regarding mishalem chatzi nezek lepara, for the cow itself, which we know for a fact that the ox gored it, so for that you pay full, and the paying full over here is chatzi nezek. And revia levlad, when it comes though to the fetus, which is a suffix, whether the ox gored it and killed it or not, so for that you only pay half of what you would have, which is only a quarter. Now this Mishnah here is following the opinion of Sumchis, which is brought throughout Shas different times. The Gemara says that Sumchis is klal, always is. Anytime you have a situation where there's a suffix, mammon amutal b'suffix, what do? Cholkin. You divide. So in this case as well, because it's a suffix, whether the ox gored this fetus, so the Baal Asher, the mazik, only pays half, which in this case is a quarter of this vlad. That's the Mishnah there. Now this the Gemara asks, why don't we take into account roiv? Look at the majority. Why do we say over here yachleiku? Leme, we shall say haleich acha roiv paris. Why shouldn't you follow the nature of most cows? V'roiv paris misabrais v'yeldos. Most cows that are pregnant give birth to a live fetus. So therefore, over here we can say, based on that roiv, that if the fetus is found dead, it's probably because it was gored by the ox, not that it was just born dead. And therefore, we should. And therefore, here the fact that it miscarried is definitely as a result of the goring. So why are we saying that you divide and you only pay half? Instead, you should say follow roiv. So this is a raya to what Shmuel says, that you don't follow roiv when it comes to a suffix regarding the money. And says the Gemara, no, over here you can't follow roiv. The roiv that there is usually regarding a cow that gives birth, that it usually gives birth to a living baby, doesn't apply here. Why not? Because Hassam, in that case, what's the suffix we have? Over here we know for sure that it wasn't a regular birth. So what is our suffix? Mishum de misapkalon. Here, the suffix we have is the ikula meimar. Either what we could say happened is mikamasa, that the ox came and approached the cow from the front, and what happened was biasusa hipila, and because of it got so afraid, the cow, and that's why it miscarried. Okay, but so it miscarried, and it gave birth to this baby that was dead as a result of the ox that approached it, but it approached it from the front, and it already miscarried before it even gored it. And in such a case, the Baal Asher is going to be potter, because this is what's called a geirim. He didn't directly, the ox didn't directly gore the cow and kill the vlad. It's just that it was afraid from the fact that the ox was approaching it. By a geirim, the halach is you always potter. If it's just a cause, it didn't directly damage it and hit and gore it, you're going to be potter for that. And but or what might have happened is that the ox came from behind and it actually gored it, and the goring itself is what vihipila, that's what caused it to miscarry, and that's why it died. Okay, so we know for sure that it didn't have a regular birth. So you can't use the roiv of the way it happens by a regular birth. The only question though is, did it happen by a gaidim because it came from the front, or did it come from behind and actually gored it and killed the baby? So therefore, I have a mum and a mutl b'safik. This is according to Sumchis that says that anytime you have money where there's a doubt whether you owe the money or not, v'chol mum and a mutl b'safik, anytime there's money there's a doubt about whether you owe it or not, chelkin, you divide it, and therefore here you pay a quarter instead of paying the full amount, which in this case would be a half. This is the opinion of Sumchis in this Mishnah. The Rashbam here just points out regarding this opinion of Sumchis of Mammon Amutl B'Safik Chelkin. This is brought in a few places in Shas. Sumchis doesn't always say Mammon Amutl B'Safik Chelkin. It's only in a case that's similar to this, where you have an actual story that happened in front of you, and you see a suffix of what happened here. Well, let's say, for example, similar, if you see a car crash and it's not clear exactly how the car crash happened, and you don't know who's responsible. But if you have a situation where there's mammon amutl b'safik, but it's not based on any specific story that happened, that you see two ways to interpret the story. For example, Reuven comes over to Shimon and says, "You owe me $1,000," and Shimon says, "No, it never happened. I don't owe you $1,000." So there's also a suffix here, but it's not based on anything that happened. It's just he claims like this and he claims like that. In such a case, Sumchus does not apply this concept that chelkin that you just divided. It has to be a story that happened where there's a suffix based on what we see in front of us. This is what's called in the Gemara usually a drara de memayne. When you have an actual story that happened and then there's a suffix, like this case, that's when Sumchus says chelkin. Says the Gemara, Le Miketanoi, shall we say that the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, whether you can rely on roiv to take out money from someone, is a machlekes tanoim. Because the Brisa says, Shor shahoyeroya, if you have an ox that was out in the field grazing, and then what happened is v'nimtza shoyer harig b'tzidai, and you know that this ox is a wild ox, and then you see another ox near it that's dead. So even if you look at this ox that's dead, and you see that the cause of the death is that somebody gored it, and also you see v'zeh muad ligach, and this other shoyer that's there, you know that it's already a muad. It's a wild shor that it goes and gores other oxen. Or another case similar, zeh menushach, you see an ox that was bitten, and v'zeh muad lishach. And here you have another ox that's a muad to go and bite. So now you would think that you have a very clear presumption, a chazakah, this is what's called a chazakah, a very clear chazakah to say that it's probably this ox that gored and killed this ox that's dead. So the Tanakama says no. We will not say biyudua, that it's understood, it's known shezeh nokchay, that this ox gored and killed this ox here, or v'zeh noshchay, or that it bit it and killed it. We're not going to say that. You can't now go to the owner of this ox and take money out of his possession based on your chazakah and your presumption that it's probably your ox that killed this. You didn't see, so we don't have a clear proof. However, Rab Acha disagrees. Rabbacha says, and he gives another example, or a similar kind of case, and he actually comes to say even a bigger chiddush, Gamel ha'oicher bein ha'gamalim, when you have a camel which is mating amongst other camels, and the nature of these camels is that when it mates with another camel, it gets wild and it kicks away any other camels that are there in that area. And then you found v'nimtza gamel harig b'tzidai, and you see that there's another camel that's dead there in that area. So according to Rabbacha, he says, b'yudua, we know shezeh haragai, that it's this camel that killed the other camel, and therefore, just based on this chazakah, on this presumption, you could go and collect money from the owner of this camel for this damage that happened here. So as I said, the Rashbam explains, Rabbacha is bringing this example as a bigger chiddush. In the case that the Tanakama brought, where you have mamish muad for goring or for biting over there, Rabbacha would definitely say that you could rely on that to go and collect money now from the owner of this ox. So now over here, basically you see a machlekes whether you can take out money from the owner of this ox or camel based on a chazakah, based on a certain presumption, based on the behavior of this ox and camel that we see. So now Savrua, the ones that wanted to bring a raya from here, that the machlekes of Rav and Shmuel, whether you can take out money based on roiv, they thought to say the ruba v'chazakeh ki adadininu, that whether you want to take out money based on roiv, following the majority, or following a chazakah, certain presumption, it's the same thing. If so, it would come out, Leme, shall we say, Rav Damak Rabacha. Rav that says that you can take out money with roiv is following what Rabacha said, that you can take out money with a chazakah. A Shmuel, Tanakama, and Shmuel that says that you can't take out money with Raiv would agree here to the Tanakama that you can't rely on a chazakah to take out money either. So the Gemara answers you can't compare to this case. And both Rav and Shmuel will explain why you can't compare. Amalach Rav will answer you. My opinion that you could take out money with Raiv, I can follow even the Tanakama. Why is this case different? Why does the Tanakama there say that you can't take out money with the chazakah? You see that this is the behavior, this is the nature of this ox to gore. The reason is because in that case we do not follow chazakah. According to the Rashbam's pshat, the reason is because in that case there's something that's going against the chazakah. The chazakah is that we see a shor that's wild, and then you see another dead ox near it. So the chazakah says that probably this shor gore this ox. But there is a raiv that's going against the chazakah, because raiv oxen don't gore. So therefore, while you have a chazakah, you also have a raiv against it. That's why over there the Tanakama says you don't take out with a chazakah. But in a case where you just have a raiv with nothing going against the raiv, and you want to use that raiv to take out money, so then Rav says, I'm right, you could still take out just with raiv. Bava Basra ruba is linon, but if it's just raiv and there's no chazakah against the raiv, so then you can take out just with the raiv. This is the Rashbam's pshat in the Gemara. There are other Rishonim though that say a different pshat. That what the Gemara is trying to say is that raiv is stronger than chazakah. In Shas, b'derech klal, the Gemara says that ruba v'chazakah ruba adif. Raiv is a stronger proof than chazakah, and therefore what Rab is saying over here is that by the case of chazakah you can't be mitzi mammon. But raiv is a stronger proof, and with raiv you can be. You can take out. That's another pshat here in the Gemara. On the other hand, the Gemara says, Shmuel Amalach, Shmuel says a different svara. I that say that you can't take out money with raiv, I can agree even to Rab Acha that says that in this case you could rely on the chazakah to take out money. Why? Because Ad kan lekam Rab Acha Hasan. Why does Rab Acha say there that you can take out money with the chazakah? Ella das linon bas chazakah. That in this case you follow the chazakah. The hu gufei muchsik. Because it's this very ox itself that there's a presumption about its behavior and its nature that it gores and it caused this death. Aval, basar, ruba, but when it comes to using the svara of raiv, lo yazlina, that you don't follow. The Rashbam doesn't really explain here well, at least, the svara of the Gemara, but from other Shainim and Achrayim explain that what the Gemara is saying here is that by raiv, you're relying on a concept of a majority that's not based on an actual majority that's in front of us. For example, before when we were talking about the buyer and the seller, what do people usually buy a ox for? Do they buy it for plowing? Do they buy it for shchita? That's not a raiv regarding this ox here or regarding this buyer. It's a raiv b'chlal, people in the world, the nature of people in the world, but they're not here in front of us right now. Therefore, there's a certain weakness to that raiv. However, the chazakah we're talking about over here regarding this ox is a chazakah regarding the very nature and behavior of this ox here. That this ox is a mu'id. That chazakah has a stronger koyach than raiv. And therefore, even Shmuel would be made that it could be mitzi.
It was mood when it stayed, or is it the
before? No, before already.
Oh,
before was already a mu'id, yeah. Tashema, now, finally, after the entire discussion, this is the only reason, though, this is the main reason why it was brought up here. It comes back to the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek. What did the Mishnah say? A person sold produce to his friend. And now, what did the buyer do? Vizaron. He went and planted it. He's using it for seeds to plant. And v'loit samchu, it didn't grow. Now he goes back to the seller and he says that there was a defect here. You sold me things that are not good. Even if he sold him flax seeds. The seller is not responsible for this because the seller could say, I sold it to you for eating, not for planting. Now, what's the pshat in this Mishnah? Ma yafilu. Why does it say the term afilu when it comes to buying zera pishton salav? Don't you think the pshat here is afilu zera pishton deruba lizriya zavni? Even when it comes to buying flax seeds, most people buy flax seeds for the purpose of planting. Nevertheless, we don't follow what most people would buy this for, and the seller can still say that I sold it to you for eating. We follow the miyut, and the buyer cannot demand his money back that he paid from the seller. So here we see clearly in our Mishnah that we don't follow raiv in such a kind of case, like Shmuel said. So for this, the Gemara does not have an answer, and the Gemara says Tanoihi, that this halach is a machlekes Tanoim, and here the Gemara brings a brayse that discusses the exact same case as our Mishnah, and it brings another opinion. Tanya, we learned in a brayse, a person sells fruits to his friend, and vizaram, and he went, the buyer went and planted it. The light samchan, it didn't grow. Or zirayne gina she'ein chalin. If this is seeds for the garden that he bought that are not edible at all, chayev b'chriyusan. So then this is not edible. So the buyer for sure bought it just for planting. So then if it was a defect, it didn't grow at all, then the seller has to reimburse him. But if it's zera pishton, if it's flax seeds, which could be used for eating as well, even though it's only a minority, the seller is not responsible for this, like we learned in our Mishnah. But then there's another opinion here. Rabbi Yasi says, nice and loy de meizera. The seller is going to have to reimburse him the value of the seeds of the pishton that he paid, because we do follow Rav. So here we see the other opinion that says that we follow Rav that would buy it for planting. Now, the Chachamim said to Rabbi Yasi. Now, as we'll see here in the continuation of the Gemara, this Amrulai is not the Tanakama. This is actually a third opinion here. So they said, there are many that buy it for other purposes. Okay, so what he's saying over here is that there's two things you could look at when you look at Rav. Either you could look at Rav in the quantity of these zera pishton that's bought, that is. As far as the roiv of the quantity of zera pishton that's bought, so then Rabbi Yasi is saying the majority of the quantity of zera pishton that's bought is bought for the purpose of planting. Okay? But what the Chachamim are saying to Rabbi Yasi is there's another roiv you could look at. You don't have to look only at the quantity of what's bought, but you look at the buyers. Most people that buy zera pishton buy it. Some buy it for planting, some buy it for eating, and some, the Rashbam says, actually buy it for other things, for refuah. They can use for medicine, for healing,
or
flax oil out of it, whatever it is, for healing purposes. So if you look at that roiv, then it comes out that not roiv of people use it for planting. Roiv people use it for other things, for eating or for medicine purposes. Right? But Rabbi Yasi says, no, you don't look at the roiv of the people that buy, you look at the roiv of the quantity. The ones that buy for planting, they're the ones that buy the biggest quantity. And therefore, if you look at the quantity of what's bought, then roiv is bought for the purpose of planting. So again, the Chachamim are saying to Rabbi Yasi that there are many that buy it for other purposes. So if you look at the actual buyers, there is a roiv that are buying it not for planting. So the Gemara explains, where do we see here the machlekes Tanoim, whether you follow Rav or not? Man Tanoi, where do you see the machlekes Tanoim? Rabbi Yasi v'amrulai. Is it Rabbi Yasi and then the Chachamim that argued with him? Tarvaya basaru bazli. They're both following Rav. It's just a question whether you go after Rav buyers or Rav quantity. Ma'razal basaru b'deinchi. According to the Chachamim, you follow most buyers. Or ma'razal basaru b'dezriya. And Rabbi Yasi is following the majority of quantity of the actual seeds, that most of the seeds are bought for the purpose of planting. So Ella says the Gemara, I Tanakama of Rabbi Yasi, I Tanakama of Amrilai. We see here a machlekes whether you follow Rav between the Tanakama that says that you don't follow Rav, and either Rabbi Yasi or the Chachamim that argue with Rabbi Yasi, both of them are following Rav. They're following a different Rav, they're not following the exact same Rav, but both of them are following a Rav. So here we clearly see that there's a machlekes Tanaim regarding this halacha of Rav and Shmuel, whether you follow Rav or not.
I can just say Tanakama against Rabbi Yasi and Amrullah.
Yeah, okay, right. It's either one, yeah. Okay, that's the conclusion of this inyan. So this whole machlekes of Rav and Shmuel is a machlekes Tanaim. Okay, so now the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, and a brayso we learned, Mahu Naisan Lai. In the case where you do have to reimburse the buyer, whether according to the opinion regarding Zera Pishton, or according to the other opinion, if it's Zera Gina, or a person bought the seeds for the garden, and over there you have to reimburse him if it didn't grow at all. What exactly do you have to reimburse him for? Says the Gemara, Dmei Zera, you reimburse him for the value that he paid for these seeds. But you don't have to, the seller does not have to reimburse the buyer for all the money that he invested. What happened here? The buyer bought these seeds and he was expecting it to be good and grow, and because of this he invested money, time, effort to plant them. So the seller does not have to reimburse the buyer for all of that. But there's another opinion, that he has to reimburse him not only for the seeds that were defected, but he also has to reimburse him for all the money that he spent in planting it and it didn't grow. So according to the Rashbam, the fact that he has to reimburse him for this is a knas. It's a penalty that Chachamim instituted that the seller should be careful not to sell defected items or defected produce for someone that's planting. Because really, the damage that he caused him by the hoitzah is just a goyim. It's not a direct damage that he sold him, but it's a knas. That's Rashbam's pshat. Now, man yesh oimrim. Who's this yesh oimrim that says that you have to reimburse not only the value of the seeds itself, but also the hoitzah as well? Rav Chisda says Rab Shimon Gamliel. This is Rab Shimon Gamliel that's brought in our Mishnah. Hi, Rab Shimon Gamliel, says the Gemara. Where do we see Rab Shimon Gamliel? Rab Shimon Gamliel the Masnisen. Is it the Rab Shimon Gamliel of the Mishnah in the beginning of the Perek? And the Gemara quotes the Mishnah again. Now the Mishnah says, you sell the fruits and it did not grow. Even if it's the seeds from the pishtan, the seller is not responsible. Okay, we skip the parentheses here. Then Amos Seifer, what does the Mishnah say afterwards? Rab Shimon Gamliel says if it's gina, if it's seeds that are used for planting a garden, she'ena nachal, they're not edible at all, chayav b'chriyusan, and then the seller will be responsible. That's the Mishnah. So here the Gemara will discuss what's really the argument between the Tanakama and Rab Shimon Gamliel. Tanakama nami hachi kama. Isn't the Tanakama saying the same thing? Zera pishtan hudein chayav b'chriyusan. Only if it's flax seeds, that's where the seller is not responsible. Why not? Because for some it's edible. But the Tanakama agrees also that if it was seeds for the garden, that are not eaten at all, the Tanakama agrees that the seller is responsible. So what's Rav Shimon Gamliel saying different than the Tanakama? Says the Gemara, Elalav, don't you think the difference is the argument here is everybody agrees you have to reimburse for those zera gina that did not grow, but how much do you have to reimburse him for the expenses that the buyer spent now on planting this? Mar savar demei zera. The Tanakama says you only reimburse him for the value of the seeds itself. Or Mar savar, Rav Shimon Gamliel is coming and adding afaitzah, that you have to pay him also for all the money that he spent on planting it as well. So therefore we see this is Rav Shimon Gamliel's opinion. But the Gemara first asks, Mimai, how do you know to explain that Rab Shimon Gamliel is the one that says this? Dilme Ibche. Maybe say the opposite. Maybe say that it's the Tanakama that's more machmer. Maybe say the Tanakama is the one that says you have to pay for the seeds and for the expenses. And Rab Shimon Gamliel is the one that's more mekel. But so that the Gemara says, Holy Kashya, that's not a question, because we usually have the following rule. Kol Tana Basra, anytime the Mishnah brings two opinions, the later opinion, Litfuya Milsakasi. He's coming to add more to what the Tanakama said. So if the Tanakama, it's mashma from him that you would be chayiv there, and then Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Chayiv B'chriyusan, the Chayiv B'chriyusan is saying that he comes to add even more, that you're responsible for even more, not just the value of the seeds, but also for all the expenses as well. Therefore, it would seem that Rab Shimon Gamliel is the one that says, that's the Yesh Oimrim brought before, that you have to pay for the expenses as well. But the Gemara asks on this, Vidilme, perhaps the way to read our Mishnah is different. Maybe Kula Rab Shimon Gamlieli. Maybe the entire Mishnah is all Rab Shimon Gamliel speaking. And it's missing in the Mishnah, and this is the way you have to read it. This is how you should learn the Mishnah. That you're not going to be responsible because these are still things that are used for eating. Divrei Rab Shimon Gamliel. This is really all Rab Shimon Gamliel speaking. And then the Mishnah adds, Rab Shimon Gamliel loime. Since Rab Shimon Gamliel said, that only if it's seeds for the garden, which are not used for eating at all, only there are you responsible for it. So maybe really it's not two opinions in the Mishnah. Maybe it's all Rab Shimon Gamliel. So we don't have a source to say that Rab Shimon Gamliel is the opinion of the Yesh Oimrim that we brought before. So therefore, the Gemara brings another brayse, not our Mishnah, but in a brayse actually, where you see that this is Rab Shimon Gamliel's opinion. Elo, rather hard, Rab Shimon Gamliel. The brayse here we see it. Rab Shimon Gamliel says a similar halacha. The Tanya, as we learned in the brayse, it says as follows: Hamaylich chitin letochin. A person brings his kernels of wheat to a person that's going to grind them for him, and veloy lesasan. And what happened is the one that's grinding it did not do a proper job. Usually before you grind the kernels, you soak them in hot water that takes off the peels, that it should be good flour, should be white, good flour. but when instead what happened is va'asan subin, and it comes out as bran, oy mursan, which is even worse, coarse bran. So what happens is, who's responsible for this? Okay, or another case, kamach lenachtaim. If a person brought his flour to a baker, and he should bake for him good bread, va'afoi pasni fulin, and the baker baked for him bread which was not properly baked. It falls apart. It wasn't fully baked. Or behemel a tabach, you bring your animal to a sheikhet, to a butcher, to shecht for you, and v'nibla, instead of shechting it properly, it's an avela. He didn't do a proper shechita. So who's responsible for? In all these cases, chayiv. So the person that was supposed to do the job right is responsible. And the reason is, all these people that are hired to do this job have the same halacha as a shem esachar. Just like by a shem esachar, you're responsible for what you're keeping and holding for the owner. As long as it wasn't an einus, you're responsible. So over here, in these cases, you weren't careful enough, you weren't diligent enough in your job, there wasn't an einus, so they're going to be responsible to reimburse the owner of this materials. Rav Shimon Gamliel adds even more. Nice and loy, this person needed the flour to be ground, or he needed the bread that was baked, or he needed the meat for a meal that he had, that he was inviting guests, and now he's all embarrassed. He doesn't have good food for them. So the worker over here that was hired to do this, not only does he have to reimburse you for your loss, but he has to even reimburse you even more for the embarrassment that you were caused now for you, for your guests. So you see over here this concept that Rav Shimon Gamliel says that you don't only have to reimburse for the actual value, that the loss that he caused, that is, but even for the additional embarrassment. This is a knas that Chachamim imposed on a worker that wasn't careful with what he does. The same thing over here regarding the buyer and the seller. When the buyer sells defected things to the seller, not only does he have to reimburse him for the actual value of it itself, but he also has to reimburse him for the expenses that the buyer invested in the work. Rav Shimon Gamliel said, "Mine gadol haya b'Yerushalayim." This was the custom that was known in Yerushalayim. If you hired someone, you gave over to someone to do the job, to prepare for you a meal, and he didn't do a good job. So you hire a caterer, and he does a bad job for you, and you have all the guests that are coming to your meal, to your chasana, to your bar mitzvah, and he does a bad job. Now, not only does he have to reimburse you for the money that you pay him for the catering job, he has to actually reimburse you to pay you for all the embarrassment that you had over here by your simcha. There was another custom, a great custom in Yerushalayim that's connected, similar to this. Mapa Prusa Agabaya Pesach. That when people had their door open, they had the door open in order to invite guests in to come and join them, but during the time when the meal was still going on, so they would put up a mappa, a what? A cloth, like a cloth that was hung on the door, al gabi pesach, on top of the door. Now, I think the Mashar here says the reason they would put up that cloth is because they wanted to have the door open to make it clear that guests are invited. But at the same time, they put up a cloth for privacy. So in that time, you know that kol zman shemapa prusa, as long as that cloth is hanging there by an open door, so guests can come in and join. Nestalka mappa, but when the mappa is taken down and the door is closed, then the guests cannot come in. What happens is if they come in, then they embarrass the host that he doesn't have any food for them anymore. So they hung this up so the guests should know when they're able to come in and join a suda and when not, when the suda is over.